Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. So good evening, everyone. My name is Candace Perry. I am the Director of the Office of Environmental Justice at New Jersey's Department of Environmental Protection. Really excited and glad to be here sitting with my two fellow panelists. So we have Commissioner Sean LaTourette, who is the state's Commissioner for Environmental Protection. And we also have Olivia Glenn, who is Chief of Staff and Senior Advisor for Equity at the United States Environmental Protection Agency's Region 2 office. And so we are gathered here to speak about environmental justice here in Somerset County. Unfortunately, there are some communities, because of their race, their income, how well they speak English, that experience more environmental burdens like flooding, air and water quality, soil pollution than others. Those same communities also tend to have less environmental benefits like green space and trees that cool and clean the air and soak up stormwater runoff and provide relief from the effects of extreme heat. We know that environmental justice issues come in many forms and they span across the entirety of our state, including in dense and urban places, but also in suburban places like here in Somerset County. Environmental injustices occur along the shore, but also in our inland communities and those along our rivers. Somerset County has been and will be on the front lines of weather-related events like extreme flooding, and as our climate gets warmer, the most vulnerable residents in Somerset County will be hit hard. This is why it is so important for government to hear directly from you, directly from those who are most impacted, so that we can be informed of your lived experiences and use that feedback to shape and color the work that we do every day within government. Somerset County is the last stop on our environmental justice tour. We've been to 5 other counties, and we're so excited to be hearing from overburdened communities and reflecting on what we've heard, incorporating that into our work, and using that to plan the next stops on our tour in 2024. So to make this happen, I want to give a special thanks to Bound Brook High School. Thank you for lending your space to us tonight. Also a special thanks to all of you who joined us at a pre-tour that we took earlier today, right before this session, just to see around the community and get some community context. We really appreciate your sharing your stories and your perspectives. Thank you. Are there any appointed or elected officials in the room today? If so, maybe just raise your hand. I see you. Thanks for being here. If you approach the mic, which is to my left, please feel free to introduce yourself and your office. For all of you who are online, who are appointed and elected officials, thanks for being here. Also, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, and we'll take note of you. So before I turn the floor over to you to come up and say your question or your comment or your concern, I do want to start with a few opening remarks from my panelists. So I will just pass it right over to Commissioner Sean LaTourette.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Evening, rather. I'm grateful to the Board of Education and the school here, to the mayor and borough administrator and many of the community members who shared their perspectives and stories with us as we took a little bit of a tour of some areas of community interest this afternoon. It's really critically important to Governor Murphy, to the members of our cabinet, of which I am one, and to the team of professionals at the Department of Environmental Protection whose job it is to better protect and improve all of our natural resources, the air we breathe, the water we drink, the public spaces that we have access to, the experiences of extreme weather events that we are all in myriad different ways at different levels of government working to improve our response to and recovery from. It is critical to all the members of that community, as it were, to hear directly from the people that we serve about the lived experience of their environment, where they live, where they work, where their kids play, where we study, so that we can better design policy solutions to some of the most pressing environmental challenges along the lines of what Candace had mentioned. It's one thing to have a bright idea as a policymaker sitting in some imposing concrete building in the middle of our state capitol, and it's wholly another to understand how one policy decision or another will affect people who we serve in the places that they call home. So hearing directly from our neighbors and the residents of this community and those who've joined us online helps us to do our jobs better. I can't promise you that I'll have an immediate answer to everything that is asked tonight. Thankfully, I am flanked by two incredibly talented women who will help with that, but chances are we may not have a direct answer to what you raise, but our promise is that we'll get you one. That's part of the work, showing up for the people in the communities that we serve and improving upon the way that we deliver that service. And I'm grateful that we're joined, as always on this tour, by our partners in the federal government from the Biden-Harris administration, our Chief of Staff of EPA Region 2, and Equity Advisor Olivia Glenn.
Thank you so much, Commissioner LaTourette. And Candace, it's always a pleasure and honor to be here with you. And thank you so much to all of you for being here tonight. We've been here in Bound Brook since about 4 o'clock today. So we've really been on the ground, going around saying different things. So I just wanted to also reiterate my thanks also for community members, business owners, and local elected and appointed officials who were a resource to us to help us get to understand some of the issues here with some real ground truthing. Thank you so much for your time. So for the US EPA in Region 2, it covers New York, New Jersey, Puerto Rico, the US Virgin Islands, and 8 federally recognized Indian nations. And I only mention that because the territory is so vast that we cover, that having opportunities like this to really be on the ground in communities really makes a difference. So we're always grateful for New Jersey DEP for keeping this invitation available to us. And I'm not here alone. I'm here with a few staff from EPA, if you all want to raise your hands in the back of the room. So the staff that I have here, one is my special assistant, who is also a full-time community involvement coordinator for EPA. We have a bipartisan infrastructure law and Inflation Reduction Act senior communications advisor, because Biden-Harris administration has prioritized doing work in environmental justice under those 2 particular acts that have large pots of money. So we want to be sure we're getting the word out. That's why Iris is here. And then last but not least, we have Drew Curtis, who's with us, who is a community engagement coordinator. So if you can't grab me afterwards, certainly you can also reach out to one of those 3 who are here in person. I believe we also have a contingency who are available virtually. So if you drop some questions in the chat, I know DEP will get it back to us, but there may be some EPA folks who also see it immediately. So thanks again. Here to listen, here to help. Thank you.
Thank you. So staying along those lines about staff, just want to give a quick shout out to my staff in the back. If any of you have questions, and for whatever reason the EPA staff team is busy answering questions, you can see any of the staff members in the back.
And I'll just note, for the sake of completeness, that we're also joined this evening by a representative from the Office of Attorney General, Matt Platkin, one of the environmental lawyers in our division of law that works hand in hand with DEP to help solve some of our state's environmental problems. So a wealth of folks here that want to help this community and communities all around our state.
Great, thanks. So, like I said, our agenda is really simple for tonight. We want to hear from you and engage in some discussion. So I'll ask folks if you're able to just form a line behind the mic to my left, your right, and we'll just take you one by one and see what you have to say and get into some discussion. If you're not able, just raise your hand. We can bring the mic to you. For those of you online, thanks again for being here. We are monitoring what questions or comments you might have online, so feel free to put them directly into the chat and we'll kind of take them as we go. I'll read them out loud. Or feel free to raise your hand So that should be in the bottom, either right hand or left hand of your Zoom controls. You can press the hand signal to raise your hand and to unmute yourself. We'll call you to unmute yourself and you can ask your question orally. If you are calling online, I'll ask you to press *9, and that is the way to raise your hand. If you're calling in by phone, *9. Okay, so that's all the instructions. My last note as a housekeeping is that, again, we are here to talk about environmental justice in Somerset County, which means that we want to prioritize the floor for municipalities that have overburdened communities. And so those towns are Bernards, Boundbrook, Bridgewater, Franklin, Greenbrook, Hillsborough, Manville, Montgomery, North Plainfield, Raritan, Somerville, and South Boundbrook. So if you're from those towns, feel free to come up and say what you have to say, and we'll talk. If you're not from those towns, we just ask you to yield the floor to those overburdened communities first, and if there's time at the end, we'll take all questions, or feel free to just see us at the end. Okay, so with that, who wants to go first?
It's always hard to be first. You never want to go first, right? So while we...
Oh, we have one?
Oh, look at this.
Great, thank you.
Hi.
Thank you and good evening, and thank all of you for coming here. My name is Mike Witt. I'm a 22-year Boundbrook resident now, and it's really important for us to see our state and federal elected and appointed officials come out here. And it's really important for us to see when Boundbrook, and South Boundbrook in particular, as you all know, Boundbrook and South Boundbrook are almost entirely designated environmental justice communities in New Jersey, and for good reason. We are bounded by 3 bodies of water that are on the 303D list for the state that are impacted for various environmental contamination. We have railways running through here. We have 287 that borders us on one side, a major federal interstate. We have Highway 22 on another side that borders us, which is a major state and U.S. highway road. And we have the Raritan River, which floods us all the time. We have the American Cyanamid Superfund site. We have the Brook Industrial Park Superfund site here. So, to me, this is like poster child for environmental justice communities. And my question for both of you really is that, we always see a lot of money being given out around the state and places in the country for big towns and big projects and big problems, but this is a little town. We have 11,000 people, maybe, South Boundbrook's got even less. And so I guess my question is, what is the commitment of DEP and EPA to smaller communities like this? And what is the game plan, for us to keep involved? If you want to put it civically, we don't have a lot of votes here. We don't have a lot of political power here, but what we do have is a tremendous amount of pollution here and a tremendous amount of environmental justice and equity. And so what is the stance from both the state and the federal perspective on how you keep that engagement with towns like this? And thank you very much for being here again.
Before you respond, Olivia, can you read the statement in Spanish? I forgot to.
Okay. We are going to answer your question in its entirety. We just have one piece that I've been asked to read in Spanish.
Just click the screen so it doesn't go black.
Of course, I didn't do that quickly enough. So give us one moment, please.
There you go.
Okay. Si necesita interpretación en español, utilice los auriculares en uno de esos portátiles. Gracias.
So the question is about, if I get this right, Mr. Witt, the commitment of the Department of Environmental Protection and our federal friends at the Environmental Protection Agency to the success of smaller communities in confronting their environmental challenges. The first thing that I'll say is we don't care how you vote, whom you vote for, or how many votes you have. We are not politicians. We're public servants. The work of our agencies is to ensure the good care and the improvement of public health and the environment that we share. And that has no political identity. It's not blue, it's not red, it's all, if you ask me, all green if you do it right. And it's from that perspective that we seek to serve every small community that has what we've experienced, at least, as challenges with capacity, challenges with being able to access some of the opportunities that I think Mr. Witt was referring to, that may be plentiful in larger, or seem plentiful in larger cities and towns that perhaps have a greater degree of capacity given the size of their population. And we had a number of great conversations on that, to that end, with your mayor and borough administrator. And again, I thank you both for joining us on the tour, one of which we briefly discussed was the expansion of our Brownfields Development Area program that enables us to help communities with state funding that can also be partnered with federal funding to clean up blighted properties and put them back to productive use. That program is one that we've recently opened, or reopened rather, to bring more communities in. I'd hope to see a community like Bound Brook make use of that program, identify parcels that are in need of redevelopment and can be then get some hand-in-hand assistance from the State Department of Environmental Protection and access to what we call the Hazardous Discharge Site Remediation Fund to do more cleanup and remediation. That's just one example, but there are many others. In our Water Infrastructure Improvement Program, another point of partnership with the federal government, we have specific programs intended to help small communities meet some of their water infrastructure needs, funding that is specifically reserved for smaller communities. And the list goes on and on. We're in the midst of, right now at the DEP, our next Green Acres open space funding round, and there are it's a competitive process for communities to apply for funding, which we'd help them through that application process. But scores are given in order to reach places that funding may not have consistently reached in the past, because that's part of the environmental justice mission, and I know one that EPA shares. So I'll turn it over to you, Liv, for some reflections on that.
Absolutely. So under the umbrella of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act, the federal government has committed a combined total of $130 billion for communities. And so first of all, I want to take a step back and thank you, because I did not know why Bound Brook had the name Bound Brook. But your description of that was just so perfect to, give like a real visual to that and really articulate what some of the issues are and concerns are that we saw today. So thank you for that.
And did you know that they call themselves Brookers?
I did not. Okay.
Okay, he's
This
nodding,
is good.
So that's true.
Yeah, this is why you have to come out to really get to know these things. So thank you for that. That place-based information is so important. That context is so important. So when we look at communities with environmental justice concerns from a federal level, it's not only huge urban centers that have, hundreds of thousands of people in it. We know that environmental justice can be present in a rural community or a suburban community, whatever the topography may be. Like there's no community that can't be it if the signs of distress are there. And so from the federal government perspective, what you also raised was about the Superfund sites. And so we know that there's one here in Bound Brook and that there are two in close proximity. And so for that work, since you mentioned those sites, if you ever have any questions about those, my team who's here can connect you with the community involvement coordinators for those specific sites if you want to know the work that EPA is actively involved in with those 3 locations. We do also maintain pretty robust websites that give consistent updates on where we are with the work that we're doing on each of those. And we don't prioritize that work any less because it's not a huge urbanized location. It's all important to us. And New Jersey is such a huge hub of that like legacy of industry. So, you know, we do a lot of that here in Region 2. The other thing that I'll just mention that is a resource that the federal government has available, particularly right now under the Inflation Reduction Act. Just last week, November 21st, we released a notice of funding opportunity that's for $2 billion nationwide. And it's to give out grants to community-based organizations. It has to be at least 2 community-based organizations or 1 community-based organization in partnership with an institution for higher education or a local government. And so with that, you can come to the EPA to apply for one of those pots of money. So I would say go to our website, epa.gov/inflation-reduction-act. I'll say it again, it's epa.gov/inflation-reduction-act. And you should be able to find that notice of funding opportunity. It will be open for a whole year, taking applications on a rolling basis, which is different than some other funding sources because we want people to have a chance to apply. If you don't get it, get some feedback, apply again before the grant closes. So we encourage everyone to take a look. So thank you.
Yeah, and just to close out on that thought, you know, I think there's often a misunderstanding that environmental justice communities are only or always our dense and our urban places. It is not the case. So New Jersey's environmental justice law defines overburdened communities in 338 of the state's 564 municipalities, meaning that just about half of the state's population live within these overburdened communities. And they're defined by race, by income, and your ability to speak English well or not. And so as the most diverse state in the country, it's no coincidence that we would have so many overburdened communities within our state because of our diversity is what makes us great. But because of patterns of income discrimination and race-based discrimination, we also have coupled with that diversity pockets of communities that need additional assistance. And so those communities, although there may be an added spotlight on the more dense or the more urban communities because it's more obvious to, does not mean that the less obvious communities are less deserving of our being here. It is exactly why we're here today.
Hi. Good evening, everyone, and good evening to the distinguished panel and to everyone seated here. My name is Olaji Tan, and I live in Franklin Township. And I'm just going to read this statement out so that I can put out my thoughts, if that's okay with you.
Of course.
Okay, thank you. I have been a Somerset County resident for the last 17 years. And we live in a state-mapped, overburdened community. Literally, we live next to Agilex, which is a synthetic fragrance company located at 10 Roosevelt Avenue in Somerset, New Jersey. As a matter of fact, the company is right in my backyard, just less than 100 feet from me. This company arrived in our neighborhood in 2017. Since 2017, this company has been dumping untreated, volatile organic chemicals into the atmosphere. And who knows what else it's in the content of what they're dumping. They pollute the air around my property, my home, and our neighborhood. Every day they operate. This air pollution has been confirmed by the Somerset County Health Department and the DEP Air Pollution Office. Like I said, this has been going on since 2017. My neighbors and I have tried to get help from the DEP to stop it, and we have made almost 150 calls to the DEP hotline since 2017. Not once has the DEP fully investigated this air pollution, despite the fact that the state has an organic chemistry lab that is designed for such investigations. Not once was air samples ever taken. We have tried to get your office, Commissioner Latourette, to help. Our requests have been ignored, really. As a matter of fact, we have a letter sent to you, October 2021. There was no response. Instead, for some unknown reason, there was a sweet deal made with Agilex. This deal allowed Agilex, the polluting company, to continue polluting without any treatment until they build a big burner. The burner is a regenerative thermal oxidizer, an RTO, which in fact is an incinerator to be sited barely 100 feet from my property. Your department has already permitted them to build this device, and they already started the construction of this device. This device only trades one problem for another. Aside from increasing environmental noise, an RTO will contaminate the atmosphere even further. Why? Because it increases oxides of nitrogen, oxides of sulfur, and it creates soot in the atmosphere. Now, for those who have any knowledge of organic chemistry, eventually this comes down and they increase the ground ozone level. Ground ozone level has been implicated in so many respiratory illnesses. It's common knowledge and everybody knows that. For your information, sir and mayors, according to the 2022 Somerset County Healthcare Report, Franklin Township ranks in the bottom 1/3 of air quality. Yes, it ranks in the upper third of respiratory illnesses compared to all the other counties in Somerset County. Now, this is the 2022 report. On that list of respiratory illnesses, we have bronchitis, asthma, rhinitis, COPD. Now, for those who don't know what that is, it's a chronic pulmonary lung disease. COPD is in the top 5 causes of death in the United States. In essence, what is being done is this company has been allowed to put in a device that will even cause a newer set of problems from what they were causing originally. Where is the environmental justice in this? We've been forced to take legal action against the DEP and the company, Agilex Flavors. It is strange, Mr. Commissioner, that the department you preside over is somehow helping to defend this polluter in our community. What does that say about your commitment to helping the people in my community and other members of overburdened communities when you and the DEP are supporting a known polluter in our environment? Is this environmental justice or environmental injustice? Wasn't the purpose of this law designed to protect everyone, regardless of race, color, creed, including those with little or no political clout, like me? Your department should be helping us, but instead your inaction in enforcing the laws against this company's activity is causing us more environmental harm. Every day this polluter operates, they're dumping untreated contaminants into the atmosphere. And the DEP is not defending us, rather they seem to be defending the polluter. This untreated pollution has been occurring for the last 6.5 years, and it still continues even as I speak till today. As for the EPA, here's a perfect example of the term oversight. We know that as the EPA regional administrator, your administration has oversight over the DEP. But somehow our reports and letters to the EPA have gone unresponded to. We have not gotten any action at all. How come the DEP has not been pushed to do what they're supposed to do? For the sake of environmental justice, why is it that we've been forced and left alone to do something on our own? I think this is all wrong. I think from my personal experience that at least where I live, The impact of this New Jersey environmental justice law is yet to be seen because we have gotten nowhere despite all our attempts. If you care about us, then you need to help us, not defend the polluter. If you care about us, then you need to work to enforce and strengthen this law so that polluting companies like Agilex, no matter their size, that operate in overburdened communities are required to comply with the laws. You need to vigorously prosecute violators of the laws, regardless of whether the victims of such violations live in poorer communities, like the one we're talking about, or they live in affluent communities, like Princeton. Thus far, the DEP and the EPA has failed us totally, really. I hope this statement will prompt some real actions according to the existing laws. And I will leave by quoting what you guys have on the flyer out there, that we all New Jerseyans deserve equal protection from pollution and equal access to nature, parks, and a clean environment, regardless of their race, income, or English proficiency. Thank you.
I appreciate you sharing all of that detail with me. One of the things that Candace and I were chatting about back and forth here was what's immediately accessible to us when we're in a setting like this. I can't see an entire file, but there's some bits of information that I can see. But I promise to you that I will get engaged and understand it in full. It is not surprising that there's a letter that is sent to the DEP that has my name on it, but that I wouldn't typically see because there's 3,000 people who work at the DEP. And typically, if there's a complaint about air quality, that would go to our division of air enforcement. So Candace and I will check with the Division of Air Enforcement and ensure that we get you a response. What I could see is that there was a proposal for a new control apparatus for that facility. And that is being sought in order to control odors. What I couldn't see from that is whether there is a piece of control technology that is somehow missing. To better understand your comment about the concern for untreated emissions, of course, that's not permissible. Depending on the size of a facility, there are different types of treatment control. And the question would be, does this facility have the right kind? And I don't want to make assumptions about that sitting right here right now, but I will promise you that I will look into it and we will get you an answer. That's the reason that we do this. Our job is not to in some way defend a company or organization that is not fulfilling its environmental responsibilities. Our job is to ensure that those responsibilities are in fact met. And so we'll look hard at this and I'll make sure that is occurring. And thank you again for sharing. Olivia, is there anything that you want to add?
Sure, I could add briefly that it sounds like for the type of facility that this is, that it is one where the state has primacy, which means that the federal government has designated the state to be the entity that's able to manage the permits around the facility. So we have a very collaborative work relationship with the New Jersey DEP. So we'll make sure that we're just remaining apprised too, since you brought this to our attention. But we'll definitely let DEP take the lead from here and be in touch.
Thank you. And if you wanted to stay after and speak more about it, I would be happy to do that.
Good evening. I'd like to echo a couple things with this gentleman. Here's my neighbor. My name is Tom Del Casal. I've been living in Franklin Township for 61 years. And as far as pollution control in that building, I can tell you they haven't done anything. That place is in my backyard, and I get the north wind I'm actually the guy that started calling the health department back in 2017. And I've got a lot of frustrations with the way this thing's been handled on so many levels. And, you know, they said way, way, way back when I first started to call, which was in July of 2017, Somerset County Health Department, I know there's a couple people here right now that are people that come out and make me sign complaints. And I have a lot of frustrations in a communication between, we call the hotline. Okay, so when we call the hotline, they ask me if I'm willing to testify under oath, okay, as to the complaints.
I don't want to interrupt you because I want you to say what you have to share. But I'm curious, when you say the hotline, can you tell me what you mean by that? Do you mean
Yeah, DEP has a hotline. And when you call, it gives you two prompts. It gives you if it's an emergency or a non-emergency. So I don't consider it an emergency. I've been a volunteer firefighter for almost 40 years in my town, and I know what the difference is between an emergency and a non-emergency. So I'm not going to abuse that unless there's a fire or some sort of a hazmat condition. Anyway, getting back to what I'm saying, so when we call the hotline, the operator takes my information, name, address, phone number, what type of odor or whatever I'm experiencing, and then they're supposed to turn it over to air enforcement, which is what we're being told. All right, the next step is air enforcement's supposed to send somebody out, but then I get the excuse, if they even call me back, because 99% of the time I never get a phone call from them, that, oh, we're understaffed, or, oh, is the problem still going on 3 days later after they finally decide to call me back.
And when that call happens, are you getting a return call from the DEP or from the county? The reason that I'm asking that question for those here in the audience or online is that there are some environmental laws that are enforced by the counties under a law called the County Environmental Health Act.
Yeah, I understand.
And so in many settings where particularly there are odor concerns, you would see the county come out first. Now that may not always be the case, and so I'm just sort of wondering what is the point of that communication. It'll help me nail down the issue.
Well, it's my understanding, so when you have an odor complaint, you call the hotline. The hotline then gets in touch with, I believe, email-wise, to get a hold of air enforcement. And air enforcement, I believe, is supposed to contact the county health department. Because I've taken it upon myself so many times when I don't hear back from air enforcement to contact the health department directly. And then if they can send somebody out, they do. I usually try to request a response because it's been going on nonstop daily since 2017. Now, here's another thing I want you to be aware of. I built my house in 2003 on my family's property. I was there before everybody else. We were there before the warehouse. Okay?
And what was there before? What was there before? Is it a new construction or just a new tenant in the facility?
It's a new tenant in the facility. When I built my house in 2003, it was an old wooded farm. It was 100 and something acres back there. And then it was purchased by a company to have a warehouse built. I believe it was called Rassi Labs. They were on Veronica Avenue in Somerset, their main company. And the building that Agilex now resides in was built by Rassi as a storage facility. So somewhere in the terms of 2016, development went in behind me. A couple big warehouses went in right behind my house. I'm a corner lot that actually I have the Sunoco pipeline that runs through the center of it. But the left rear corner of my property is Agilex, 250 feet behind my property line. And another 200 feet directly behind me, we have Vico company, which is a chemical company on Elizabeth Avenue in Somerset. And there's a storage facility there, and the other half of the warehouse, I'm not sure what it is. But my point was that nobody was ever notified when a change of conforming use was put into place to allow a storage facility to become a manufacturing facility. Okay? Now, I don't know where the DEP comes into play on that, but we did call a township, and the township gave me some excuse. But anyway, my point being is that fast forward to where we are right now, I'm just very aggravated at the policy and how things work when you make a call to the hotline. Yeah. It gets lost. There's a communication disconnect. There's a communication problem somewhere. And I think, you as a director, I think you need to step up to the plate here and do what you're supposed to be doing to help us residents. I mean, we don't have a recourse anymore. who's our voice? So, thank you.
Thank you for using yours to tell me that. And as I mentioned to the resident who shared just before you, I promise you that we will look into this further before the end of this week. There are a couple of things that strike me about this. So it sounds like this is largely an odor-driven experience, and so when you are identifying an odor issue, you're reaching out to the hotline. Now, there's different ways that these odor matters can be handled. That's one way, but there are other ways that can result in more immediate response. So I will discuss that with the team.
I have one more thing I want to add. So when the odor complaints, when we first started making them in 2017, we were hearing different things from the county health department that the company was going to be installing some carbon filters. All right, that never happened. And I know for a fact it never happened because in order to get up on that roof and do anything, you're going to have to get up there with a crane. There were no cranes on that property because I could see it. And so, you know, we're getting stalled. We're getting stall tactics, and it's just been going on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I hear that
where we are.
The oxidizer device that your neighbor mentioned is meant to control odors, and so that the odors are captured and not resulting in the experience it sounds like that you've had repeatedly. Although the one note that I did have on this was that there was some supply chain issue with this piece of equipment. But nonetheless, there are many ways to address odor issues. So we'll make sure that we talk to them, and meaning air enforcement and to the county.
Mm-hmm. One more thing I want to add. So a quarter of a mile from our house is a L'Oreal facility. Okay. They had a very similar problem with the neighbors several years ago. I don't have a time frame. I couldn't tell you exactly when. I know some people that live behind it, very much like my neighbor right here. And apparently they had enough people that complained that the odors were so bad that they did do something about it. And the reason I know they did it is because our fire department, that's our primary response area. And I've been to that facility several hundred times in the last 10 years that I've been an active member, mostly at night. And you don't smell anything even when you walk inside, let alone outside. When you go near Agilex, depending on wind direction, it knocks you over. There's days where I'm working out my yard. I work from my home. So when I'm working at home and that odor's that bad, I have to stop what I'm doing and go in the house because I can't breathe. You know, it's horrible.
And I'm sure it's also dependent on the type of, they're a fragrance manufacturer, correct?
I believe
and so.
so.
It may also depend on what formulation they're working with.
I understand
right? And so
that.
it could be, just because the odor stopped doesn't mean the problem is gone away. It may mean that there's a different product being run. Irrespective, there are odor requirements that sound like from what you're explaining haven't been being consistently met, and so that will have my attention.
Right,
It's
and
why
one
we do this.
more thing I'd like to add. I didn't know, I'm a business owner in town for a long time, and I'm not the guy that wants to shut a company down, but they have to do something to remediate it and be good neighbors. We're good neighbors, they have to be good neighbors. And to me, to have a company like L'Oreal address it a long time ago, but they got it done relatively fast. I think this company has to get a little bit more of a push, and that's where you're going to come in.
I hear you loud and clear. It is not the case for anyone who may hear this bit of misinformation that complying with environmental laws and being a good neighbor is somehow a business-ending proposition. That is not true.
Thank you, sir.
So I won't be fooled by that.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. As you know, my name is Sean Przybylkowski. I, along with my co-counsel in our case, represent a...
You just want to get a little closer to that mic.
No problem. Me, along with co-counsel in my case, represent a group of residents and businesses in Bound Brook, specifically due to the flooding that occurred on September 1st, 2021, when, as we know, an NJ Transit train got stuck in a floodgate, which resulted in mass flooding in Bound Brook. My specific question is, why hasn't there been any investigation by the NJDEP into what occurred on September 1st, 2021?
I don't know that there hasn't been. So I think what I'd have to do is get you a response to that is more direct. Certainly, in the aftermath of Ida, there are many points of after-action review. So I don't know that that it hasn't been studied. And I've evaluated the flood maps, and I've looked at the circumstances of the gate's operation and why it was unable to be closed. So I think that it's probably not the case that it hasn't been studied, but I think the what of what is being studied is probably really matters to your. Uh-oh. Oh, okay. So we got. Oh, they're supposed to be doing that. Okay.
Wrestling is big in Bound Brook.
Sorry,
so.
we've got for those online. We're here in the high school, and there was just a ruckus behind us, but it sounds like sports fighting, not bad fighting.
Yeah.
Sorry for that. So I think there's sort of a question back is, when you say studied, what do you mean? What do you think hasn't been studied? And then perhaps I look into that to be able to answer the question better.
Not studied, investigated. To our understanding, we have no knowledge of the NJDP investigating this matter at all. And not only that, why hasn't any relief been offered by the NJDEP to Bound Brook residents and/or businesses as a result of the flooding?
I'm trying to frame my response to that appropriately, because the need for relief might not rest, not the need for relief, the avenues for relief might not rest with the NJDEP. So in a storm response and recovery scenario, there are multiple agencies that provide relief to those that have been impacted. Usually, in the immediate aftermath, those agencies are the OEM, which is Division of State Police, and elements of our Department of Community Affairs. Typically, the Department of Environmental Protection is further along in the recovery and rebuilding chain. So, for example, we run a program called Blue Acres, where we help homeowners that are interested in being bought out of repeatedly flood inundated properties to relocate, and then we then help to create flood storage where those formerly flood inundated properties were. But in that immediate aftermath, we're not typically the agency that provides immediate relief.
But the
does that answer your question?
The NJDEP controls the flood system. Not only controls, they own the flood system.
For those who may not be familiar with exactly what we're talking about here, so this is part of the Greenbrook Flood Control Project, which is a project that is developed by the Department of Environmental Protection as the state partner to the federal lead agency, was the Army Corps of Engineers. And so as the project reaches construction and operation points, the operation of those gates they're not directly controlled by the Department of Environmental Protection.
Yes, sorry. I should have said the flood system's owned by the NJDP. The County of Somerset and NJ Transit work together with controlling the floodgate. So that's my point.
That sounds accurate to me. I'd have to read a memorandum of understanding between the agencies to know for sure, but that does sound right.
Okay. So what is the NJDEP's stance on who is responsible for the failure to close the floodgate on September 1st, 2021?
I don't think the Department of Environmental Protection has a stance on who's responsible.
Even though they own the flood system?
Yes, even though the flood system is state property that is administered by the DEP, I don't have a stance on who's responsible. I do understand that a train got stuck.
Yes. So the floodgates were never closed. A train got stuck in the floodgate. As a result, neighboring properties and businesses nearby were all destroyed. As I'm sure there might be Bound Brook residents here, due to the flood system being in place, most residents and most businesses were advised, you don't need flood insurance, you're safe. We didn't have that in this scenario.
Who said that to them?
Most residents were all advised.
By whom?
Because it was no longer considered a flood zone.
By whom?
The Bound Brook was no longer considered a flood zone, so you don't.
You don't what?
They,
Were you going to say you don't need flood insurance?
no,
Okay.
no.
If someone tells you you don't need flood insurance,
Do
No.
you mind sharing who told you that?
yeah,
So-
I'd love to know that.
My,
Okay.
Okay.
and then the last thing, I promise,
No, it's okay.
is the NJDEP going to provide monetary relief to any residents or businesses in Bound Brook?
As a recovery matter, the relief that is available from the DEP is through participation in the Blue Acres program. Now, that's not the only post-IDA relief that is available from the state government. The majority of the relief is administered by the Department of Community Affairs. And so if you were to go, I wish I had the link, web link off the top of my mind, but I don't. But I bet if you were to Google Department of Community Affairs and IDA relief, you would see that there's an IDA relief action plan, and there are multiple categories to apply for funding for those who have been impacted by IDA. Some of that may be funding for repair programs. Maybe you have to, there's elements of your property that you need to repair, and so there's a bucket of funding for that. Then there's other funding that may be available to elevate your home if you're eligible for that. And then the bucket that the DEP would administer is for buyouts of property for folks that have been routinely flood inundated and wish to relocate. There may be other buckets of funding beyond those, but those are the three that come to the top of my mind. And so the Department of Community Affairs action plan for IDA relief is sort of the governing document, if you will. And so if you were to look at that, you would see those different buckets that folks can apply to.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Maybe we can see if they're going to reopen it.
What is that? Is there a short? Sorry, please go ahead. Candace was just showing me. I was trying to distill the website link, but it was too long. If we do we can get one and we can circulate it back to the folks who are who've signed the sign-in sheet. Make sure everyone here has the link for the program accessibility.
Hi, good evening. My name is Christy Colbert. I'm a commissioner with the Bound Brook Shade Tree Commission. Happy to have
Thank you.
Yeah, we're happy to be here. We got a bunch of our commissioners here tonight. One at least is on virtually. So again, we want to thank you for being here as well. Kind of going back to the first gentleman who spoke, we're very fortunate. We have great support from our elected officials and our borough administration as far as funding goes for some of our shade tree activities, but we're always looking for additional funding. Cost of trees keeps going up, the cost of planting goes up, et cetera. After doing an inventory a couple years ago, we have a lot of trees to plant to meet our goals. Part of that obviously falls into the category of environmental justice, targeting neighborhoods that can most use it, reducing heat islands and things of that nature. This doesn't apply, my comment doesn't apply to state grants, because I've not applied for any of those yet. I will be, and I'll be looking forward to speaking with Iris, wherever she is, before the end of the night on the IRA. But one of the things that we encountered when we filled out the applications is in a lot of cases we were required to utilize both the overburdened community mapping by the state, as well as the FFIEC geocoding mapping tool. Please don't ask me to clarify what that acronym is for.
I know what you mean.
Thank you. But part of that comes that comes out of that is a tracked income level for a specific address. So going back to the original comment about how we are a very small community, we're less than 2 square miles. When you start creating these tracks, or whoever creates these tracks, what often happens is the lower income portions of our community get blended with higher income parts of our community, and so the whole tract gets skewed. And so in a lot of cases, we find ourselves trying to, explain why we want to put trees in this particular neighborhood to help with environmental justice, but it's not supported by the data because the tract doesn't support that information. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So that's a challenge. And again, I kind of relate that back to the fact that we are such a small, small geographic community.
It's not. It's not disqualifying. What we're having a sidebar here about is we understand that. I wouldn't think that it's disqualifying.
And it may not be.
Okay.
And again, what was interesting is we obviously were not awarded for these 2 particular grants that I had applied for. When we went back and looked at who was, it did tend to be more larger urban communities versus small communities. I will certainly be looking at additional opportunities to apply for state grants and some other types of grants that may be more beneficial to us as a smaller community.
Which pot of money are you speaking of?
This was not state or federal
Okay,
money.
okay.
These were like Arbor Day Foundation and some
Got
of
it.
those kind of things. Yeah, so I'm not
Okay.
applying this
Okay.
to you guys. I'm saying
I
I will
see.
be looking at your grants to see
Sure.
if there's additional opportunity.
Okay.
Which it sounds like
There's
there
2 in
will be.
particular on that end you'd want to look out for. One is administered by DEP for urban and community forestry.
Yeah.
That those have not opened yet.
Right.
But we can make sure that you have the resource contact for the urban and community forestry program, so that you can be aware of that. And there's 2 others that may be of interest. So one is our Natural Climate Solutions grant funding, and we do both green carbon sequestration, meaning capturing carbon through plant life, and also blue carbon sequestration using engineered wetland type features to sequester carbon and beautify a community that may be of interest. And then one other is a program that we're running with schools in particular, but that we hope to expand to municipalities as well. And right now, the DEP is running alongside Sustainable Jersey this Trees for Schools program, in part because we know to increase urban and community forestry canopy cover, and in part because we know some of the smaller communities, those, as I was mentioning earlier, that are capacity constrained and getting new plantings that you have to manage for and be really attentive to and planning them out, and that may be really difficult on a community-wide basis for municipalities. So we started this pilot with schools because there's the thinking is that there's more capacity in there. You can organize school groups around it. So I'd point the Shade Tree Commission to perhaps talk to the school board, and if they're not participating in Trees for Schools, we're broadening that funding from I think like $2 million to close to $10 million.
Yeah, we have reached out to the school district. We're going to make another attempt to do that this year. If anyone's here from the school district, please come and find me. And that kind of ties in with then my next comment. The urban and community forestry. We work with New Jersey Shade Tree Federation and all those groups, right? So we're very excited about all the money that's going to be available through the IRA. The question I have is really kind of more specific to forestry, and how do we get more trees? How do we get more supply? Because part of the concern that we have is the tree growers I don't know what all the circumstances are that they can't grow. Maybe it's capacity, maybe it's to some degree we've had super harsh summer the prior summer, some of those kind of things. But I don't know if there's anything that can be done either at the state level or through the forestry department to help with the supply challenge that we're going to have. Because, like I said, we did an inventory. We know how many trees we need. It's hundreds. To really do what we want to do in terms of supporting our community. And we're just one, and as you said, of over 500 municipalities. So everyone's going to be looking for some.
Yeah.
So and then also just a diversity of tree varieties, because we've cut off, like, we aren't planting any more maples because we have too many maples, that kind of thing. So we're trying to do all the right things, but to the extent that we can get more support for the supply side of things, that's where we need help.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. We do what we can through the FREC and the state nurseries, and including giving, as we grow at the nurseries, giving those out to the public to increase the density of native species, right? Because growers are having problems. You don't want to bring in the non-native species. It's a whole problem. Lanternfly.
Non-native, non-invasive we can tolerate, but yes,
Right.
but as many, natives
we
are great.
we focus at the resource centers that DP runs on those native species. There's a good question to be asked about the capacity of those facilities to help meet the needs. So it's a really good point. I don't have an answer sitting here, but I appreciate the question, and we'll take it back.
Appreciate that. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you for your work on the Shade Tree Commission.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I could actually add a piece for a response also. Oh, okay, so I'm just going to also reply. So you see Iris is back. So definitely Iris should be one resource to you. The other that I wanted to note is that the federal government has launched a new initiative called Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Centers. And so we have 17 of them nationwide. The one that's the focus for here is called We Act for Environmental Justice. They're based in New York, but they do cover the state of New York and the state of New Jersey. And they have a website. I believe it's weact.org/TICTAC, TCTAC. Weact, WEACT.org/TICTAC, so TCTAC. I see that Donette is checking to make sure I'm telling you the right thing. It is right. Okay, Candace told me that was right. Okay, so if you go there, they will help guide you to all these different pots of money that are available under IRA, not just at EPA. I heard there's something for trees with agriculture. I do not know the specifics, but they should be able to help, and Iris can point you to some resources also. Okay.
I do want to read a comment from one of our commenters online, Linda Powell, a question actually, going back to a topic that we covered earlier on in the discussion. Linda says, you mentioned solutions to problems, which are of course necessary, but what preventative, proactive steps are being, I guess, taken to prevent problems or compounding problems that already exist, like air pollution?
That was the end of the question? Mm-hmm. Ooh, it's a very broad question, and there are a lot of answers to it. So part of the answer to that is I think would be a reference to this regulatory reform initiative that the DEP is on. When we talk about problems that are, how did Linda phrase it? That problems that are existing, how do we not just solve them, but prevent such problems from occurring?
Proactively.
One of the things that we've been incredibly focused on at the DEP in recent years is looking hard at the laws that exist and in response to what. Right? We have the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act because at time preceding me, the rivers were literally on fire, air was routinely stricken orange, and not just when Canada was having a bad wildfire. And those environmental laws that grew up in the 1970s and took root in the 1980s and have been largely beneficial, they're not always the most proactive. And so we've been taking steps to turn our focus toward greater proactive measures to protect the environment. A fine example, and public safety and public health, a fine example of that is a flooding rule that we put forward earlier this year, and it's called the Inland Flood Protection Rule, because the DEP sets standards for development in flood hazard areas. And by that I mean we require certain building measures and techniques so that properties and people are less vulnerable to flooding. And we amended these rules to take into account the fact that now, in part because of climate change, we see a lot more rain and a lot more flooding than we used to, which means the standards need to be improved. Now that is proactive insofar as new development or substantially rehabilitated development will have to comply with these new standards. But it doesn't change the building patterns of the past. So that's an example of how we can be more proactive to reduce a public health and environmental risk in the case of flooding. And there are many such examples in the case of air pollution. There are now stricter standards in place for hazardous air pollution than have been in place before. We are now more strictly regulating things like fumigants, which are hazardous air pollutants. We are now regulating carbon emissions from electric generating sources, which had never been done before. But all of this, it happens in an iterative way. There's not one giant moment where suddenly the entire legal landscape becomes more proactive all at once.
And to add on to that, it is the work that we do, it's the work that the Office of Environmental Justice is charged with doing. Our responsibility is to help the agency to think about ways to proactively integrate environmental justice into everything that the agency does. So from our regulatory functions, like the commissioner was just saying, to the way that we enforce, the way that we monitor our state's natural resources, the way that we provide parks and open space, and so on and so forth, and the ways that we allocate funding to communities. In all of that, there is an opportunity to better integrate environmental justice, and so the office is leading an effort to have conversations internally with all of our offices and our programs and our divisions to see what implementable next steps exist to integrate EJ. And so stay tuned for that. My office will put out some opportunities for the public to weigh in on what you all think are opportunities for us to do more, better, faster, more efficiently. Stay tuned for that work.
And there are already, to the great credit of the DEP team and Candace's team, there are already great examples of that. Right? The prioritization of funding for open and green spaces in areas that have lacked as plentiful open and green space has been a successful endeavor. It led to the creation of our Urban Parks Initiative, for example, which just has a funding round open right now for $10 million statewide in conjunction with our standing Green Acres Open Space and Recreation opportunities. And so we are trying to prioritize the expenditure of those funds to reach areas that they haven't always reached, right? And that's an outgrowth of this environmental justice endeavor. At the same time, we're trying to ensure that as we invest heavily in drinking water and wastewater, stormwater upgrades, that we are targeting those investments in places that haven't had the same degree or that we know have a higher incidence of flood risk. And so moving those communities into a program where they are getting direct help to get these projects developed, whether that's getting lead service lines replaced right out of our drinking water, or if it's getting our combined sewer systems separated so that we're able to manage that more rainwater risk. There's a lot of work that sometimes is sort of invisible until there is a new pump station that's removing stormwater at a faster rate in your community, but that type of work is ongoing all of the time.
That was great responses from the state government. And I'll just say from the federal perspective, we do have a number of ways we're also trying to be proactive as well. And this Thriving Community Technical Assistance Center is one example. Knowing that there is a time clock on this money's availability, many of the pots until September 30th, 2026, we're trying to be really proactive it's almost like when you're being proactive, you have to lean on lessons that have been learned. So it's not just necessarily trying to preserve or conserve something to be what it is today, but to learn from the past and say, okay, now we're recreating this opportunity. How can we do it better than we did before, identifying what some of the challenges are? And so that's what we're trying to do with the Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Centers. It's one of the reasons why we have a rolling open door for the applications. It's also a reason why we're tiering so many different funding sources all at one time, so that if you can't get to one, you can get to another as the opportunity presents itself within this window of time. But I was also thinking about the work that we do as a government entity from an arc of perpetuity. And one of the really nice things about having a scope of territory is hearing things from different perspectives. And our Indian nations, who we just met with last week, they always talk to us about thinking what we do 7 generations ahead. And they mean that. It's not just the detergent that sits in the grocery store that took their idea, okay? They feel some kind of way about that, and I can understand. But what's interesting about that is, you know, when the commissioner was up here talking about the Clean Water Act and how he wasn't around in 1970, I wasn't around in 1970 either. So the work that the professionals did in 1970 benefited us that came after 1970. Mm-hmm. So in that regard, it is proactive. And so for some of the things that we're doing right now, that we're looking at how do we improve them now, it's not just the arc of time for us, it's that arc of perpetuity, it's that thinking 7 generations ahead. What can we address right now, even if it's reactive, to make sure it's proactive for the generation that comes after us? So I would say don't be totally discouraged if you feel like, you know, sometimes, especially in the EJ space, we look reactive. We're also trying to be proactive for the next generation. It's all a matter of perspective.
That's a really great point, right? We wouldn't be sitting here talking about being proactive if there weren't folks who were being reactive to fix past problems. It is arc of perpetuity, man. I'm stealing that.
I just wrote it down.
Stealing that. But there's actually, I think, another important feature of what Olivia is saying, and since she won't sing her own praises, I will sing them. And point out something that maybe this audience or those online might have missed. The Biden-Harris administration has done something really transformative in administering lots of money like this. And by that I mean this: typically, the type of funding that is available from the federal government flows to the state government, and then flows from the state government to county and local governments, right? And so at each level, where funding priorities are being identified, projects are being selected, and significant public monies are being expended for good reasons, to improve water infrastructure, to reduce flooding, to improve air quality. Oftentimes, much like I said at the beginning, we think we know best. We think we know what is needed, but without the community's participation, without forums like this where folks like you are coming and sharing your perspectives with us, we don't know. But also, even with that perspective, we may not do the best job we can, which gets me to the transformative piece. What you heard Olivia mention before about this $2 billion, it is available to community-based organizations, not from the federal government to the state government, to the county government, to the local government. It's available to community-based organizations. How many of those did we hear about on our tour today, right? And how many of them may not know it? And it can be available to the local government too if they partner with that community-based organization. So you get to sort of see what the federal government is suggesting here in the administration of these funds, that we work with grassroots organizations, that it's from the roots up, not from the top down, that always gets it done. And so making sure that we're telling our Boys and Girls Clubs, our Middle Earth, our sports aligned groups, those that have an interest in these imperatives of improving our environment, there's a great wealth of funding available to them.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
We'll take the next commenter. Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Erica Phillips. I work with Somerset County as an environmental and resiliency supervising planner. And so I'm kind of new to this position because it is a newly created position. So I guess my question is, and you kind of answered it, and I wanted to see if there's something more that you could elaborate upon, but I wanted to know, what do you see as the county's role in like best practice, as far as like you're in a lot of different regions in the United States, but then on the state level, what are some things that you see that are best practices? Because like I said, I'm an environmental and resiliency planner, and like I said, it's a newly created position, mostly based on some of the things that have happened in our county, a lot of the flooding. But I'd like to know what you've seen around, the United States, Ms. Glenn, or in, just in the state. What are some best practices that you see that you think work well, or some examples of some things that have worked well? Like I said, I'm a planner. I'm in the Office of Policy Planning and Economic Development, but I would like to know if you could tell me specifics of some things that you think have worked well, where the county government has come in and worked with you all in tandem to do some things that were what you thought were, best practices, good planning, and good, just, I guess, in sync with everybody, with the state and with the national government.
Oh, what a great question. And every time that we engage in these spaces, there's always something new that I'm like, wow, look what came into this room. And your question is one of those. One of the first best practices I can offer you is that there should be one of you in every community and every county and every local government. Because one of the biggest challenges that we face from a resilience and environmental improvement perspective is that sometimes you have to make an issue that is incredibly important, but not the duty of any one official within a government organization. You've got to make it someone's job. So it starts there. So hats off to Somerset County for creating that position. That's a big deal, right? So that's a really big deal. And what does that enable you to do? Well, one of the things that I would suggest first is getting in touch with our Resilient New Jersey program if you're not in touch with them already. Because what you'll find out is that the state of New Jersey has a state climate change resilience officer, right? And that CRO is located within the DEP and works on climate resilience planning with our local partners. There is funding available to our local partners for climate resilience planning. And what does that mean? Well, there are any number of measures that a community can take to address the resilience needs that are plaguing all of our communities here in New Jersey, and that are only getting worse because of climate change, right? It's getting warmer. We just came through the last 12 months have been the hottest on record, right? It's not going to magically get better than that. We need to plan for how we deal with that. So understanding what we are doing with our extreme heat action plan would be something the county should want to know and pursue maybe its own. There are flooding tends to be a significant issue in most of these forums that we have. The Resilient NJ planning program is intended to be a community-centered planning process where we identify the areas that are at risk or having adverse experiences and what some of the solutions to them are, so that when Olivia shows up with $2 billion, you've already thought about it, have a potential project idea, and could get into her funding round before it closes without doing that advanced thinking and planning and community engagement on solutions. When these opportunities come to get investment dollars, you could miss them, right? There are many, many more suggestions that I could give you, and so could Courtney, Courtney Whitcap, sitting right behind you, who runs our Blue Acres program and works directly with our Chief Climate Resilience Officer. Liv, any ideas?
Yes. I think that county government is one of the most versatile levels of government that there is, because you're close enough to be place-based and really know your communities, but have enough of a scope where you can see how multiple units of local government on the municipal level does things differently, and it's almost like you get to see and share some of the best practices with others, which is pretty good. The lens also gives you an opportunity to know a good cross-section of stakeholders. So I would say for the time that we're in right now, with all this money that like EPA has, how the county knows so many different municipal officials and also so many community-based organizations, you're really in a great location. So I would say definitely to market on that, because collaboration is how it seems like so many things are getting done now. The other thing, so the internet in here isn't that fabulous. It's probably good, helps with the school day, that all the kids can't be on their phone in this room. But this evening, little challenge. We do have an advisory council at EPA that's called the Local Government Advisory Council, where we're always trying to make sure that what we're doing as a federal agency really resonates as it should on a local government level. And I know that we do have representation in Region 2 that's a part of that nationwide body. So I would say if you wanted to maybe see what that body's been talking about, and then who those representatives might be who are in Region 2, that might be a good conduit, kind of like to stay on a pulse of EPA and even, giving us feedback on how we can do things better to be more supportive of the county level of government.
Mm-hmm. And I'll share an idea, not as a best practice. I don't know that anyone has done this, but I've long thought that the counties can serve a really critical role in helping municipalities think through, so on the environmental justice side, less on the climate and resilience side, but helping municipalities think through the municipal zoning and planning tools that exist to integrate or fight against environmental injustices. So what I mean by that is like, if a facility, we've heard commenters say today, their displeasure about facilities that have moved in their communities, and oftentimes that's approved at the local level first before it gets to the state for a permit. And so how can the county help municipalities be better equipped to think about some of those decision points before it gets to the state or before it moves along the planning scope, Yeah. Yeah. Right, and utilizing our state's overburdened communities map that we've been mentioning a couple times today, and integrating that into the zoning maps, for example, doing some layering for the municipality and the county to see where the overburdened communities are and to see the extent to which those communities are stressed by environmental pollution burdens, and to use that information toward better planning practices. Okay, so we have a commenter online and a hand raised online, so we'll take those two next. So from Tolani Taylor, says, about warehouses, I have met several warehouse activists in Somerset County who are highly concerned with the increased warehouse development in New Jersey. Why hasn't the NJDEP taken the necessary steps to regulate the industry better?
We get this question a lot.
Yes.
We get this question a lot, and my answer, I think, is often cold comfort, but it's an honest one. We weren't made to do that. It's not what we were built to regulate. There's not an underlying environmental law about warehouses that we administer. And so largely, the DEP has nothing to do with a warehouse at all. It is almost entirely a local government matter. Now, where the DEP may get involved is because there's something else environmental that we do have authority over that is related. So for example, if that warehouse is located in a flood hazard area, it has to comply with our Flood Hazard Area Act. But that Flood Hazard Area Act has nothing to say about one of the principal complaints about warehouses, which is the truck traffic and the noise and the exhaust and so on and so forth. So my response, unfortunately, the cold comfort is that there is not much that the DEP can do. The issue here, I think, really is a function of planning on the local and on the county level, and how we are being attentive to that, the siting issues that we may not think about instinctively about traffic, potential emissions issues, and sort of disruptions of the quiet enjoyment of a community that can be worked upon a community where a large facility is not sited very thoughtfully. But those aren't issues that we largely have a say in. And I know that can be unsatisfying.
And next, I see that Kirk Frost, you have your hand up online, so feel free to unmute yourself and go ahead.
Hi, do you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, I apologize. I was hoping to go in person. And I want to thank the NJDEP and the EPA attending the local area. And I hope you do it more often, not even just out of equity justice, just about engagement. But I also want to thank the EPA Region 2 Bureau for going back, and I had presented that the natural gas compressor was producing annual reports of methane emissions that were grossly false and under-reporting what they were actually emitting for the last 20 years. EPA went back and then asked them to correct the last 10 years. And they, this year, provided revised data, and I suspect to NJDEP and also to EPA, revised data that for their annual methane emissions. Now, the emissions that they revised are still far lower than what they reported to FERC. And the interesting thing about that is that, well, around this area, there are a number of natural gas compressors. One is right at the border of Bridgewater, south of Bridgewater, right before you get to Bound all of these compressor stations emit far more toxic air pollutants and methane than they report every year. And EPA does have an OGI, optical gas imaging methodology standard, but I've recommended it to NJDP when NJDP was asking input about greenhouse gases, and the policy advisors responded back, and it's on the website, that no, that's not possible, we can't do that. But if you speak to Teledyne, the company who makes them, they'll line you up with the right camera to actually go around, especially around the Bound Brook and the Bridgewater area, to actually investigate what actual emissions are there that are odorless. Well, methane also has a vocabulary, but you get a better idea of how much of this emissions are in this area. And I'd also ask NJDP, I've talked to the air permitting group, and they were not aware of an electric compressor being installed by Tennessee Gas Pipeline, emitting 142 tons of methane every year. And I didn't get a sense that they were willing to go investigate it, because they agree that if it does, then it should be reported annually. And I just think that these aspects, if you want to look for preventing in the future for future generations, especially around this area where there is an intensity of compressor stations that are emitting more methane than what's being reported, this would be something to invest time into and to thoroughly investigate. Now, I know NJDP is unable to, in their rules, they don't allow themselves to do audits of sites except to review the books. But this is something that doesn't have to be on site. It can actually be outside of the driveway and reviewing that. And I think just one other thing about this area with equity justice, if we have funding from the IRA, I thought that it actually had to go to municipalities. You mentioned that it can go to organizations. That's a misunderstanding on my behalf. But, and that's confusing for me, because we really need to take advantage of the funding to help all the people in the area to get as much renewable energy, and then also to start targeting electrical storage, distributed electrical storage in the area, to get us off of natural gas, as well as, people say, well, we don't get rid of my gas stoves. Well, if you give them a benefit that pays for it, maybe they would. Because inductive gas stoves, inductive electric stoves are more than 70% efficient, whereas gas stove is like 25% efficient. So anyway, thank you very much. And I appreciate you guys engaging with the public, and I hope it happens again.
Thank you for your comment, Kirk. I appreciate the points that you've made. For the folks in the audience who may not sort of readily have familiarity with some of the air monitoring considerations that Kirk was raising, there's a difference between the way that the government, certainly on the state side, and Liv, you could speak for the feds, monitors what we call criteria air pollutants, meaning the type of pollution that is associated with respiratory and other illnesses, and therefore we require the emitters of those type of pollutants to control that pollution to a very significant degree. There's a difference between the monitoring and control of those types of emissions, criteria and hazardous pollutants, versus the monitoring and control of climate pollutants like greenhouse gases, right? Greenhouse gases over the last 50 years of our modern environmental law have not been monitored and controlled much at all, and certainly not in the same way. We're beginning to better wrap our arms around that. And there is a new rule that requires the monitoring and reporting of these types of emissions. And what we find there is even that's a bit incomplete for some of the reasons that Kirk is mentioning, how methane emissions may be tracked and captured and visualized to make sure we have a complete picture of those highly warming gases and emissions of greenhouse gases that don't carry the same immediate health risk, and so they haven't historically been monitored and mitigated for in the same way.
Yeah, thank you for that, Commissioner. I'll add, that we have a remarkable air team in EPA, both in our region, but also for the agency overall. Brilliant air scientists who are doing really great work, who are deeply committed to improving air for all of us to improve our quality of life. Some of the elements you were talking about, I don't know with a great level of specificity, and I don't have to because they're so great and they know so much. But we'll be sure to pass on the praise that you shared to them. What I will say in terms of the funding that we have available under Bill and IRA is that the money we have is not only going to community-based organizations. There's so much federal money available under the Inflation Reduction Act and bipartisan infrastructure law. One of the things that we've given money for to states and local governments, as well as to metropolitan statistical areas, was for climate pollution reduction grants. And we gave that money out earlier this year for plans to be developed by those tiers of government for ways that they can work planning out strategically how we can reduce those climate emissions. Now, Commissioner LaTourette was one of the first commissioners in the nation to reply to that.
I want all the money New Jersey can get.
Yes, yes. And so for New Jersey, for New York, for our metropolitan statistical areas that cover New York and New Jersey, it overlaps. That metropolitan statistical area does not respect state boundaries. So there's one up here that's New York, New Jersey, and even goes across to a piece of Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. And then there's one that's the greater Philadelphia area that pulls in Camden County, New Jersey, like that section of South Jersey. All of those areas of geography all went after that climate pollution planning money. What is following that next year is going to be implementation grants. Now, they've already been announced, but they're due early next year. What has to happen, and this is something for everybody here to think of, yes, your governments or the entity that applied and received the planning grant is leading the way. But what all citizens have an obligation to do is to make sure that the plans look good, because when it comes to this implementation money, anything that these entities come for to say they want money to implement, it has to be in the plan already. So we are still involving states and local governments with IRA, but there's still also a role for citizens and community-based organizations to play too. So check that out. For a place you can go to see a little bit more about that, I'll reiterate that one website, epa.gov/inflation-reduction-act. That will tell you about more than just the environmental justice funds. Lots of money under different air projects. So take a look.
Thank you. So we'll do a last call for questions and comments. Okay. I don't think I see anyone else online. But if you do think of something else afterwards, please feel free to email environmentaljustice@dep.nj.gov. So environmentaljustice@dep.nj.gov. I forgot it that quick. And so that email inbox account goes to my team that's sitting in the back that helped to plan session, they look at that fairly often. I don't know if you all can hear me. They look at that email account very often, and so we will be responsive to any lingering questions or comments that you have. I just want to take this time to thank you for taking your time to be here tonight, to meet with us, to talk to us, to share your perspectives. We really appreciate it. You might have seen some chatter here because we're like thinking of solutions in real time that we're going to take back and work on, and I've been taking a bunch of notes. So everything that you've shared and said is not said upon deaf ears. We're taking it in, and the civic engagement that we do is our duty, and I'm so grateful to be here with you all tonight to do this. And so this is not the end of our relationship together. You now know us. You can contact me and my staff, and we can have an ongoing conversation should we need to. So thank you. Pass it to my colleagues to say some last words to close this out.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll just reiterate the thanks for all of you for being here tonight, for sharing your perspectives and experience with us. And I'll just say, you know, EPA is doing so much to have all these monies available right now, but they're nothing but a press release if communities and government agencies don't go after them. And I don't want it to just be a press release where we get to pat ourselves on the back and say, good for us for doing something that looks nice. We actually want to see this transformation happen. Because it's so much money, we need it to reach new places that have never come to EPA before. We need Bound Brooks to apply for this money, not just the big urban industrialized locations, for us to expend these funds and to transform communities the way we're looking for. So we want to continue to be here to be a resource for you, and thanks again to DEP for providing us with the opportunity to be here with all of you.
I want to thank all the Brookers. I'm never going to forget that one. And to neighbors from around Somerset County who joined us here in person or on the Zoom. I'll say it again that we can't do our work as well as we want to do that work without hearing from and engaging directly with the communities that we intend to serve. It's our duty to do this type of engagement. It's what you should expect from your government. You have ideas on how we should do it better, let us know, because everything's imperfect and we're all a work in progress. And I'll end with a reflection that I very often share. My colleagues are really tired of hearing it, but it's important to me, and I hope it can be important to you. The fact that our environment, our air, our land, our water, our open and green spaces, our fish, our wildlife, all of that environment belongs to the people of our state. And it doesn't belong to the government, it doesn't belong to the DEP or the EPA or the county or the town. No matter how hard all of those people work, the environment belongs to you. It is just our job to protect it and to improve upon it for you. So thank you for helping us to do that.
Thank you. Good night.